Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Makona Man at YouTube with another Q&A session. Last week I requested for any shout outs and questions, and today on Friday I will definitely be answering them. This time they came from numerous sources, some of them anonymous, so please bear with me, though they are pretty interesting. First question via email. Do you know what can replace the Link primer? It's called Solme Q Multi-Material Primer Spray. It is a transparent surface primer used for multi-material like metal, plastic, wood, etc. Decent effort. English second language, much respect that. Don't worry. Very happy to help you out regardless. Now, with the Solme Q, there are alternatives by Tamir and Mr. Hobby metal primers. We have discovered or discussed more in depth in the message that they are very small quantities and quite expensive, and that this large rattle can was very cheap but cannot be sourced at the current location he is at. I have recommended that in the automotive industry you do come across clear etch primer, which is usually used for wheel rims, alloy wheels and other automotive capacities and purposes. It is more or less the same as the Tamir and Mr. Hobby metal primers, which I can only assume is a rattle can version of the Solme Q. Hopefully this helps. Clear primer is useful for a variety of reasons. If you're not too worried about the undercoat, most importantly, or if you want to mask and keep a proportion of the undercoat through gradient shading or paint masking. Example, if you had a clear Gundam and you wanted to add some touch-ups of paint or some shades of paint blending into clear, that could be a very fascinating effect. If you're only worried about covering metal, you've got some photo etch, you've got the little Warhammer miniatures or pewter figurines, all you need is etch primer. And etch primer mostly comes in a grey format that's just labelled to handle metals and other materials. Etch primer, like regular primer, can be applied on plastics, models, styrenes without issue, harm, damaging the plastic or anything. It almost doesn't even feel that much different applying and painting it to where you sometimes get multi-purpose or dual-purpose primers. Hopefully that helps. Michael is back. Hope you're doing well, buddy. I am. Thank you very much for asking. 3D question for your Q&A. Do you use primer for your resin parts prior to painting? If so, what kinds, if it matters, and your process? Thanks, Alan. Keep up the good content. Thank you very much, Michael. I've made so much primer content over the years on YouTube. I think I've covered the topic more extensively than anyone else. And following any of my videos on 3D printing where I get a print and process it to a finished model, every single project has definitely been primed. The process or the reasoning you want to prime a surface is uniform colour. So when you're building up base coats and colours, it is consistent, especially with thinly pigment density paints like yellow and white. If you've got multiple colours or a very strong colour, that will bleed through the white. So something neutral like a grey, a black or even a silver can make a finish look more vibrant, brighter, darker, whatever you want. That's the importance of a base coat or a uniform coat. Your second goal with priming is etching. Some surfaces are non-porous, they're very smooth, they're unforgiving, and paint will just slide straight off it. Especially metals and glasses, where the etch primer definitely comes in. The beautiful thing about 3D printed models is, even with resin and even something very finely printed, it is laid in mechanical steps, the Z-axis. If it's 0.1 mil, 0.2 mil, no matter how thick, there's a lot of ridges and awkward steps, bumps, cuts that makes it so easy for paint to just grab on. I've seen YouTube work in progress says, mostly from the 3D printing community rather than the scale modeling community, apply outright poster, acrylic, watercolors, or the cheaper water-based paints straight onto the plastic in a few layers to build up to give an overall tone or small detail without any issue or fear of it flaking off, damaging, or whatnot. The normal discussion on 3D printing forums, boards, channels, that sort of thing of what's the best and ideal paint, half goes for rattle cans and heavy enamels or lacquers, a lot like a car. Another half of the discussion goes into the scale modeling paints, with a fair proportion always attempting with the cheapest artist paints first, which is all very acceptable. It can definitely hold and bond to those paints, and if you've got something printed in its base colour and touching up just small details, that's fine. You don't necessarily need primer. The clear primer we just talked about in the previous segments would be very ideal, useful. Though if you're painting the entirety thing, extra etch is also not really a factor at all. The third factor, and the most important one, is if you're looking for a very smooth finish, especially out of a filament printer, or looking for any faults that come out of a resin printer, it gives you a uniform coverage, and it looks for any Z-axis lines that are just really obnoxious, any holes, any webbing, any 3D printing faults that would ruin a smoother, glossier 3D printed surface. What's really amazing is if you use a spray putty or a filler primer and your faults are minimal, it will cover it and already make it quite smooth. Get it for sand and spray it with spray putty or filler primer a second time. That gives it the ultimate goal of having a smooth surface etched and a single colour. If it shows you all sorts of issues, then you know where to sand, cut, fill with putty, repair the surface, sand it, polish it, hit it with a primer one last time, and that's just to look for faults that paint will accentuate or bring attention to. After that, you apply paint onto it, it etches beautifully, it's polishable, it's maskable, it's all of those things, nothing's going to bleed under, and you're going to have an ideal finish. Again, all of my stuff is definitely primed for those purposes. If you're using the base colour of the print, that's when some difficulties can come in, but not really my specialty. Hopefully, for a full paint of a resin model, that definitely answers your question. And also, thank you very much for your support, Michael. It's most definitely been appreciated and noticed. Capri Sun. Can these be reused after wet sanding? And this is in response to the God Hand sanding and polishing sponges. These were originally bought at the start of 2020 in my hotel room in Osaka, making the Sakura Tyson mech. The original 5 sponges I used for that video, leading all the way now to the start of 2021, still use and apply very well. They have not really worn out or been damaged. Many years ago, I actually bought some German sandpaper that had the same grading from 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10,000 grits, and used that for very high gloss polishing. They also haven't worn out, and they're about 3 to 4 years old. Due to the price tag and the high quality of these pieces, they will continue to go on and on. Eventually a stage will occur when they will damage and wear out from more so incorrect, heavy or abusive use, though gentle and regular use will see a very long life out of it and many models produced from its application. Shoot me. Very long time supporter, over 10 years. I've been thinking of making a YouTube channel for about 3D printing, scale models. Any tips before I start? Most definitely. Shoot Me is behind K-Scale Models and is producing some amazing models on the 3D printed Gunpla group on Facebook. They've been really marking up with the models they're producing. A lot of the stuff they're making, they're selling as physical garage models or downloadable prints. The scene is really exploding with decent and talented content. Really worthwhile checking out. And with Shoot Me, it's it's probably the cut at the top of the whole community, to be honest. He's worked on the Zumi from Gundam Seed, which is in 1 to 1700 scale. Bandai has released the other two ships, never this one for some reason, in their ship grades. It's absolutely wonderful. It's up for sale. It's worth checking out. Definitely have a look at K-Scale Models website for models and prints. But covering all of that, straight back to the original question, we've verged way off. For your purposes, definitely start a YouTube channel. You've got a bit of a business where you're making garage kits, you're doing 3D prints, you're doing all these wonderful things, and you're directly engaging the community with desirable models and products. All it's going to do is direct more attention to yourself. We're going to have the ability to interact with customers and make some money, show content, share, teach, educate, all that sort of thing. Your stuff is really cool. I would love to learn the process of your approach to drafting, 3D printing, modeling, topics that you like to tackle, from the printer to the process to the painting. For such a really cool tech and a thriving community, there's seriously a lack of content on YouTube. A lot of people are very happy to do filament reviews, printer tutorials, and fault finding, which is all excellent for the number of printers and machines on the market, but I feel that there isn't quite enough model-centric videos where once the model is taken off the printer, then you change your hat to a scale modeler and finish it by putting it up, building a base, priming, painting, finishing, basing, all of that wonderful stuff. So I think it would be very much appreciative. Just without fear, start making content and plastering it up there immediately. I know you definitely like to share and help and give tips to other people doing the same thing, so you're going to be a wonderful figure to guide and lead, as well as just showing some really cool builds. Be very regular in your uploads, not too regular, and eventually an audience will come. I will definitely rally and get you guys who are interested in some amazing 3D printing and modeling talents to follow and check it out. That's about it. K-Scale Models. The channel hasn't quite launched yet, but subscribe early. Another anonymous message, this time on Facebook. Thanks again for your informative modeling videos. Have you used this product from Super Cheap Auto? Super Cheap Auto is a automotive warehouse hardware store in Australia. They just sell car parts and products you use on cars, car paint, fluids, aftermarket bits, seats, all that sort of thing. I'm very familiar with them, and at one point they did sponsor a video to review some of their products. Funnily enough, the acrylic gloss clear I have reviewed on this channel before, though it was in the tin form to thin down and apply onto scale models. I've also used their rattle cans, mostly the primer and spray primer onto 3D prints, which worked absolutely wonderfully. Your acrylic gloss clear, even though it would be a little hot in the thinner department and applies heavily, dusted on appropriately, is perfectly acceptable and usable for modeling. They have a large range of colours. They're mixing lacquer colours in small and large tins of paint. I'll be buying a few of those in the foreseeable future as a cheap alternative to lacquer paint, and using an artist color wheel to mix a range of colors from the primary and secondary, and just having a ton of paint at my disposal opposed to buying very wasteful little jars. That is absolutely wonderful. And they can even custom mix colors and put it in a rattle can for you. There's all sorts of awesome resources you can find in an automotive store that is very useful for 3D printing and scale modeling. But yeah, definitely use it on your models. Won't damage, won't cause any problems. You'll have a good time. Mr. McFiddlesticks Reviews 71. That is an awesome name. He left a comment on a video. I just wanted to highlight this. It's hilarious. Jesus, this video is so old. It was from 2010, and it just covered the Bandai system weapon parts, which I bought straight from Japan. EMS'd it, reviewed it that week, trying to play the game of who reviews something first and gets all the views. I've given up on that game long ago, and he funnily came across it and just amazed that the community spans this back on the channel. I have a very wide catalogue. If you're newly subscribed here or haven't had much of a dig, I spent quite a while curating my content into playlists, and they will give you a whole list of videos on many builds in general, sub-builds, tutorials, just painting, just 3D printing, or just general reviews and tutorials. Another anonymous question. Hello, saw your video on clear coat on YouTube. Great content. If you don't mind, I just want to know if there is a difference between flat coat and clear coat. I'm still new to this. To us seasoned, this is a very obvious answer. And to beginners, it's something you don't quite think about until you enter the hobby. Paints are mixed for certain reasons, being a military, civil subject. It might be glossy, it might be matte. It depends on the pigment added and what that paint is going to be used for. And for us, we're able to put a clear on top and curate our finish to the finish we want. And a lot of people who are new to the hobby do not necessarily know that you can control the finish to quite an extent with airbrushing or hand painting. And the difference between gloss and matte is all paint is naturally glossy. It's got a resin film to protect the pigment. It gives a reflective sheen. The more gloss or clear you build up, the more intense that sheen looks, and it could almost build up to an intensity of the model looking wet, submerged in water, having a film of glass on it. That's a very deep super gloss to just a general broken up sheen that slightly reflects light. That would be a semi-gloss or a light sheen. Going in the opposite direction is your mattes. Less and less of a sheen, where it almost looks satiny or just silky. There's a little something there, but it's practically matted. That is the starting of the matte game. Some products sells it as a matte where it looks silky. Other mattes sell where it's dead flat matte, no sheen. It's just a very plain surface, almost like dirt or concrete. Other products will sell it as a premium flat or matte, and that will be absolutely dead. Not a single lick of sheen whatsoever. And that could be a bit troublesome when you're trying to buy a product and making it work to reflect your work, which I fall through the trap a lot, being into heavy weathered rust military builds. I'm normally looking for a very dead flat sheen or a premium matte or flat. In the Gundam and hobby communities, science fiction, that sort of thing, a silky, slight sheen is more ideal and is exciting to look at. I was provided with these pictures as well of some Sazabis, and let them know that the top one not only is just glossy, but it's also a metallic pigment, and that gives it the effect of a red metal. And metallics can fall into other subjects where you've got metallic a fat pigment or flake, metallic flakes in it. Candy, where you have a very fine silver metallic and you build up clear red for an intense, deep gloss effect, where you're not too sure if it's metal or a super deep gloss, which can look very cool. And then you've got pearlescence, which is a metallic pearl-like pigment applied on top of the solid color to give it a color shift ability or a tone or finish shift ability, which is amazing in itself. The two bottom images were given, the one on the left, which appears to be mostly matte with a slight sheen. That's just an out-of-the-box snap Sazabi. That would be natural Bandai plastic, which always has a very smooth, polished veneer and does come across as kind of glossy, though neutral. That would be light sheen, semi-gloss. And then on the right, you have either a Sazabi that's been painted or only plastic that's been top coated. With how small the picture is, I can't tell, but that is a dead flat matte finish. A couple of announcements for the channel. Animanga has contacted me just after my vlog and told me that they are going ahead for the 3rd and 4th of July in Melbourne at the Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Centre. They're going to have a little less space due to COVID. They're going to have some restrictions. It is an anime event that is going ahead. I assume that they definitely intend to have a gunpla or modelling activity or some sort or form of representation. There is at least a talk to have a hobby event, and we're also talking with the potential of Zurich being a sponsor and having a prize as a paint or something. Might even throw something in from the salt mines. So we're working through that. When there's more details, I'll update that on Facebook, Twitter, and the text post proportion of YouTube. And we'll just work away from there. But due to how unstable things are at the moment, it's relative, and we're not too sure until we know what the political climate is closer to the day. Interestingly enough, for 2011, Bandai Japan, hobby division, has announced that the Gunpla Builders World Championship will not be running this year out of respects due to COVID. We have an English write-up here that's also been announced on the English website, which you can have a bit of a read. They are missing out. They're very apologetic about it. We will see it in the future. Again, very uncertain times, but we'll see what the future holds. No other announcements or messages to mention from the channel. Thank you very much for watching. The next few videos that will be released on this channel is going to be 3, 4, 5 videos all about Zurich, covering each major product, reviewing it all in one go, which is excellent for people who recently have access to it in Australia. The link down below will take you to the Zurich Facebook page where you can order to buy stuff. They've got some promotions, competitions, and some samples that you'll be able to get on social nights at the Salt Mine Hobby Shop. There's a few samples here where you'll be able to pick some up or at least even test them. It's worth supporting. For you guys in Southeast Asia, the Philippines, this is an opportunity to learn more about the product in English and see some comprehensive and in-depth tests that will compare it to all other hobby paints. You'll have an idea where it roughly stands in the hobby world. Though, in my opinion, they're pretty good and I'm thoroughly enjoying them. I'm likely to use some of their products in my repertoire in future. Thank you for watching. Till next time, stay tuned for more content and we'll catch you guys later. See ya.